the 1953 top set, and the stories behind the men. In this series, I'll be unpacking stories of the men of the cards of the 1953 top set. Most cards of the set are called commons by the hobby, but the men on the cards are anything but common. Cards 11 through 15. Sally Bars, card number 11. Sally Bars was born in Manhattan. When he was 6 months old, the family moved to the Valhalla section of White Plains, New York. They had no indoor plumbing and lived on what was considered the poor side of town. He was a three-sport star at White Plains High School, playing football, basketball, and baseball. After an incident involving another high schooler, Sal quit both the baseball team and school. He was too good of an athlete for his small high school to lose, so the powers that be turned the truant into a professional. In exchange for returning to school, an anonymous benefactor left $12 at the local drugstore for him each week. Sal turned the envelopes containing the money into his mother. He originally signed with the Giants in 1942 and enlisted in the United States Army Air Force shortly afterward. During his time in the Army, Sal would effectively become a test dummy, with him saying of his ability to handle the test, "I could take 6.5 Gs without a pressure helmet." He would make his Giants debut in 1947. In a quote from Johnny Bars, when asked, Uncle Sal would say, "1951, Bobby Thompson got us in it, and I got us out of it." Manager Leo DeRocher would give Sal all kinds of errands to do during their frosty relationship, including coaching a Yale baseball player who was struggling as a favor to investment mogul G.H. Walker. The two young men became friends after Sal helped him. This led to Sal getting his job as a broker after his playing days. The young man from Yale was George Herbert Walker Bush, named after G.H. Walker, and they remained friends for the rest of their lives. On June 15, 1953, Sal was sold to the St. Louis Cardinals for $12,500. The most remarkable thing about his time in St. Louis was how similar his two seasons were. In both 1953 and in 1954, he had exactly 57 at-bats, 14 hits, and an identical batting average of .246. He concluded his playing days with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1954, and his career batting average was .244. His career in finance would span 50 years. Sal would remain close friends with the principal owner, George Herbert Walker, who was the uncle of President George Herbert Walker Bush. Sal's storytelling from the Giants' pitch sign stealing system in the second half of the 1951 season to leaving ball games early to place horse racing bets for manager Leo DeRocher made him an after-dinner and long after-dinner speaker. He was heavily involved in charity work for over 50 years. He died on December 10, 2008, at the age of 84. Well, if not for a spectacular catch by Hank Bauer in the ninth inning of the sixth and final game of the 1951 World Series, Sal Ivars might be remembered quite differently today. His only appearance first looked like the stuff of legend. He hit a ball deep into the outfield of Yankee Stadium. It looked like a sure hit that would score a run and tie the game. It was the kind of hit that can either alter a team's momentum or perhaps change the course of the World Series itself. The sold-out Yankee Stadium crowd of 61,711 braced itself for the sure hit. Somehow, sliding and diving, Bauer just managed to nab the ball, ending the Giants' threat and terminating the series. With that miraculous catch, the Yankees became world champions and the Giants' improbable 1951 season came to an end. On the very bottom right, you'll see Sal Ivars' 1952 Topps baseball card. So the Giants were involved in a complicated sign-stealing system in 1951 where Sal became a very important part of the process starting on July 20th. From his position in the bullpen, he would either hold up a ball indicating a fastball, or if he tossed the ball in the air, it meant a breaking ball. Many of the Giants' batters came to rely upon Sal, and the team enjoyed one of the most fabled comebacks in all of sports history. His assertions were later confirmed in the book, The Echoing Green by Joshua Prager. After going public with the story in the 1990s, Sal maintained that he flashed Bobby Thompson the signal for fastball in the pivotal game, just as Adamantly, Thompson maintained that he never saw or even looked up for the signal, although he had admitted to the Giants' sign-stealing operation. As the story was told by Sal and several Giants players, Giants manager Leo DeRocher stationed Hank Schenz, a substitute infielder, and later Herman Franks, a coach, behind the opening in the Giants clubhouse above center field. Almost 500 feet away from home plate, they peered through a telescope to spy on the opposing catcher's signs. An electrician working for the Giants sat alongside them. When the electrician was told by Schenz or Franks what type of pitch was coming, he activated a buzzer in the Giants' bullpen in right center field. One buzz meant fastball was coming, and two meant a curveball. Sal was seated in the bullpen, listened for the buzzes, and before each pitch, the Giants' batters could glance at him for a signal. In his book, Pennant Races, Doubleday, 1994, Dave Anderson recounted the sign-stealing operation and quoted Sal as having told Giants batters, "Watch me in the bullpen. I'll have a baseball in my hand. If I hold on to the ball, it's a fastball. If I toss it in the air, it's a breaking ball." Detailed accounts of the scheme related by Joshua Prager in the Wall Street Journal in 2001 in his book, The Echoing Green, based on his interviews with Sal Ibars and many of his former teammates. The Giants, far behind the Brooklyn Dodgers in mid-August of 1951, came back to tie for first place and won the pennant in Game 3 of a playoff on Bobby Thompson's shot heard around the world off of Ralph Branca. That three-run homer at the Polo Grounds with one out in the ninth inning was perhaps the most dramatic moment in baseball history. When Branca delivered his fastball pitch, a high inside ball, Thompson knew exactly what was coming? Who knows? "I gave him the sign," Ibars told the New York Times in 2001, but Thompson told Prager that he had been concentrating so heavily that he did not look up toward Ibars. Sign stealing by mechanical means was outlawed by baseball in 1961. As for that episode a decade earlier, quote, "I didn't feel guilty about anything," Ibars told Prager. "I was just doing my job," end quote. Howie Judson, card number 12. Howie Judson was an outstanding baseball player in his formative years, but was widely recruited to play college basketball. He accepted a scholarship to play for the University of Illinois in the fall of 1943. The Fighting Illini team was coming off a 17-1 record in the previous year, including a 12-0 record in the Big Ten Conference. Judson saw plenty of playing time his freshman season, highlighted by a 15-point game, including hitting a last-minute shot to hand the University of Kentucky its first of two losses that season. In the spring, Judson would play baseball for the University of Illinois. In the summer of 1944, Judson continued playing American Legion and semi-pro baseball. In his sophomore year at Illinois, he earned honorable mention on the AP All-Western Conference basketball team. Now, two teams were chosen. Honorable mention was equivalent to the third team of players from primarily the Big Ten and Midwestern schools. And he did this despite missing several weeks with an ankle injury. In the spring, big league scouts began to take notice when he pitched an exhibition game against the Cleveland Indians. Judson was named captain of his baseball team for his junior year, which he never started. He was drafted into the United States Navy in mid-August of 1945. He was stationed at Great Lakes Naval Training Center and received an honorable discharge after just 3 months. The former All-State basketball player taught his twin brothers Paul and Phil, 9 years younger, the fundamentals of sports. In 1952, just after Judson headed to California for spring training with the White Sox, Paul and Phil led Hebron, now Alden Hebron, to the IHSA Boys Basketball State Championship in a 64-59 overtime victory over Quincy. The Giants, with an enrollment of 98 students, were the smallest school ever to win the one-class system. When the Northwest Herald did a series in late 1999 chronicling the best athletes and teams of the century, Howie Judson was ranked among the top 10 athletes. The 22-year-old made his major league debut on April 22, 1948, against the Tigers. Judson's success was also marred by a reoccurrence of a malady that would have far-reaching consequences in his playing career. In mid-season, he was hospitalized for, quote, "the same old trouble, his eyes." Noted the Daily Sentinel of McHenry County. The problem dated back to his senior year in high school when he suffered a gruesome injury. He was hit in the left eye by a wire staple from a slingshot at a game in Elgin and required emergency medical treatment. The injury never fully healed and was also the reason he received an early medical discharge from the service. He was also rejected by the Army in 1950 during the Korean conflict. In 1947, he developed an infection in the same eye, which numerous eye surgeons, including one at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, examined. Quote, "An infection has just about ruined the sight of my left eye," Judson once explained. "My right eye is perfectly normal. I was told there was nothing that could be done for my left eye." At the age of 33, Judson hung up his spikes after 14 years in professional baseball, including minor league baseball. After Judson's playing days, he was employed by the Stolper Company in Walworth, Wisconsin, where he was the head of the shipping department. Judson and his wife, Martha, would eventually relocate to Winter Haven, Florida to retire. Howie Judson died on August 18, 2020 in Winter Haven, Florida at the age of 95. Well, Howie Judson was 6'1", 195 pounds, and he pitched for 14 seasons, 1946 to 1959, and this included minor league ball. In the middle left, you'll see an article by Harold Burr that talks about Judson's battle with the blindness that he was experiencing in his left eye. Years ago, Alden Hebron athletic director John Layler retired the jerseys of the 5 starters from the 1952 championship team: Paul Judson, Kenley Spooner, Don Wilbrandt, Phil Judson, and Bill Schultz. But they also retired Howie Judson's jersey, number 11. Judson leaves behind a remarkable legacy. He was named to the Champaign News-Gazette All-State basketball team, the first of 4 in his family to earn that honor. Played baseball and basketball at Illinois, then pitched for the White Sox and the Cincinnati Reds over a 7-year major league career. Paul and Phil Judson also were named All-State players by the News-Gazette, and later Rob Judson, Phil's son, also was selected as an All-Stater. And Phil coached Rob at Zion Benton. Connie Marrero, card number 13. Connie Marrero was born on April 25, 1911 in Cuba. He worked on his father's sugarcane farm and played ball for the local amateur teams throughout his youth. By his mid-20s, Marrero was pitching at the highest amateur level that Cuba offered. Marrero pitched for the Mexican National League in 1946 and debuted with the Havana Cubans, which was the Washington Senators affiliate of the Florida International League, in 1947. At age 36, Marrero went 25-6 with a 1.66 ERA and threw a no-hitter on July 12th against Tampa en route to helping the team with the FIL championship. By 1950, the Washington Senators convinced Marrero to give the major leagues a try. He was signed to a contract for $6,500. In January of 1955, the Washington Senators attempted to option Marrero to the minors before eventually releasing him. He would return to Havana, Cuba, and sign with the Sugar Kings of the International League. He would go 7-3 with a 2.69 ERA and 16 starts. Marrero would make appearances for the Sugar Kings in each of the next 2 seasons before retiring as a player. He worked as a scout for the Red Sox before the Cuban Revolution cut off the talent pipeline to the big leagues. He would then serve as Minister of Sports for the Fidel Castro government. During his playing days, Marrero had been advised by teammates not to enroll in the Major League Baseball pension program. Efforts by the baseball assistance team and others, Marrero received support payments totaling $40,000 in his final years of his life. In 2013, Marrero would receive a $20,000 payout from Major League Baseball. It was a payment granted to those who had played between 1947 and 1979, which had been held up due to issues with the United States embargo on Cuba. Connie Marrero passed away on April 23, 2014, at the age of 102 in Cuba. Marrero was a revered figure in Cuba and held the title of the oldest living former Major League player for several years before he passed away at the age of 102 on April 23, 2014, just 2 days before a planned national celebration that was to honor his 103rd birthday. Marrero would go 39-40 with a 3.67 ERA over 5 big league seasons, working 574 and one-third innings after he turned 40 years old. Hall of Famer Tommy Lasorda, who saw Marrero pitch in the International League games, once said he could throw a ball in a teacup. That's the type of control he had. He was listed at 5'5", 158 pounds. He was selected to the 1951 American League All-Star team. Though he didn't play at age 40, he was the oldest first-time All-Star to that point. Connie Marrero had a wind-up that looked like a cross between a windmill gone berserk and a mallard duck trying to fly backwards, once noted Dominican slugger Felipe Alou. According to Life magazine, he was the most implausible ball player in the U.S., who threw the ball like an orangutan heaving a 16-pound shot. All told, Marrero pitched hundreds of games in dozens of leagues before he finally hung up the glove on the eve of Fidel Castro's rise to political power. A career that began in the Cuban Amateur Athletic Union League at the age of 27, despite such a delayed start, was durable enough to stretch for a full 2 decades. He was the only pitcher to toss a pair of no-hitters in the Cuban AAU Amateur League history, and his first 3 pro seasons in the FIL circuit, his control was so outstanding that he struck out 586 while walking 117. In 1939, he became the first Cuban ever to defeat the USA in World Amateur Play. Among live ball era pitchers who were at least 40 years old, only Marrero, Grover Cleveland Alexander, Warren Spahn, and Ted Lyons had at least 2 seasons with at least 15 complete games. Following an unsuccessful cataract surgery, Marrero would become blind in his final years. He threw out the first pitch at the 1984 Baseball World Championship. In addition, on March 28, 1999, Marrero threw out the first pitch of the game where the Baltimore Orioles would take on the Cuban national team in an exhibition game in Havana, Cuba. Marrero threw 8 pitches to Baltimore's Brady Anderson before leaving the mound. It's reported that Brady Anderson gave him a half-hearted swing. In an interview with the New York Daily News, the 87-year-old Marrero would say, "For me, this is special. I have not seen a major league team in 40 years. I stayed here because my parents were here and they were old. I never made much money playing baseball, $6,500 my first year with the Senators to a top salary of $18,000. The next video I pulled from the Major League Baseball website, and it shows Marrero pitching to Brady Anderson in 1999.
I think he's going to strike him out. He wants to stay there until he strikes him out. Or until he throws a strike. The umpire. A little different than the ceremonial first pitch in America. I can't believe you, Brady. You tried to bunt on an 84-year-old pitcher. I'm going to have to get on Brady about that.
I think Marrero wanted him to swing. I think Brady was a little nervous about if he swung, if he hit the ball back to the mound.
Clem Labine, card number 14. Clement Walter Labine was born on August 6, 1926 in Lincoln, Rhode Island, and grew up in nearby Woonsocket, where he played football, hockey, and baseball. At age 17, he was assigned to the Newport News Dodgers of the Piedmont League and appeared in 12 games. America was involved in World War II, and after Labine turned 18 in August, he volunteered for the paratroopers. He was out of baseball all of 1945, and after his discharge from the Army, he returned to Newport News late in the 1946 season. He is one of 8 players in Major League Baseball history to have won back-to-back World Series championships on different teams. He held the National League record for career saves from 1958 until 1962. His 96 career saves ranked 4th in Major League Baseball history when he retired. He also set a Dodgers franchise record of 425 career games pitched. After compiling a 5-1 record for Brooklyn as a rookie in 1951, he shut out the New York Giants in Game 2 of the National League pennant playoff, 10-0. Labine went on to enjoy several stellar seasons for the Dodgers as a relief pitcher. In 1955, the year Dem Bums finally brought a world championship to Brooklyn, he led the National League with 60 games pitched and 10 relief victories and earned a career-best 13 wins overall. Although the save was not yet an official statistic, he has been retroactively credited with leading the National League in 1956 and 57 in that category with 19 and 17 respectively, and was an All-Star both years. He appeared in 13 World Series games, winning 2 and losing 2 with a 3.16 ERA. Following his retirement from baseball, LeBain settled again in Woonsocket, where he became a designer of men's athletic wear, serving as general manager for the sporting goods division of the Jacob Finkelstein and Sons Manufacturing Company. LeBain died on March 2, 2007 in Vero Beach, Florida, after suffering 2 strokes while hospitalized with pneumonia and subsequent brain surgery. He had been serving as an instructor at the Dodgers Adult Fantasy Camp at their Dodgertown headquarters. Clem LeBain was a very durable pitcher for the Dodgers for many years, and somehow he was able to retire Stan Musial 49 consecutive times. 2 of LeBain's brightest moments came in a very unaccustomed role as a starter, a 10-0 victory over the Giants in the second game of the 1951 National League playoff, and a 1-0 10-inning shutout of the Yankees in Game 6 of the 1956 World Series. Although he was never a threat at batting, LeBain's 3 hits in 1955 were all home runs. LeBain played in 5 World Series, 4 with the Dodgers, 1953, 1955, 1956, and 1959, and 1 with the Pirates in 1960. 3 of his teams were winners: the 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers, the 1959 Los Angeles Dodgers, and the 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates. LeBain also developed a sinker ball and threw an unorthodox curveball called a cunny thumb curve. It's thrown by holding the thumb parallel to the index and middle fingers, as opposed to the common method of placing the thumb on the opposite side of the ball. LeBain had some heartbreak off the mound. While interviewing him for his book, The Boys of Summer, Roger Kahn noticed that Clem drank several martinis. "You heard about Jay," LeBain said. "Who's Jay?" "My son Clement Walter LeBain Jr. He stepped on a mine in Vietnam and blew his leg off. The Marines sent a car to our house. Barbara was away. I was out playing golf. My brother-in-law saw the Marine car and went over and said, 'Is this about Jay, Clem LeBain Jr.?' The Marine officer was very polite. He asked who he was talking to, and my brother-in-law said he was Jay's uncle, and the Marine said that under the rules he couldn't say anything, only to next of kin. So when they came and got me off the golf course, the first thing they said was, 'Jay's been hurt, but he's alive.' He wrote me a letter from the hospital. He was so calm and matter-of-fact," Kahn wrote. This was the second time since the 1953 World Series that he had seen LeBain's eyes full of tears. Now, Kahn was familiar with LeBain as he had interviewed him several times in the past. LeBain continued, "If I hadn't been a ball player, I wouldn't have been away all this time. But the traveling cost me all of it. Jay growing up, if I hadn't been a ball player, I could have developed a real relationship with my son. The years, the headlines, the victories, they're not worth it. Look what it cost us, Jay's leg." Now, I found it very interesting that Clem LeBain held some guilt over his son's loss of a leg in Vietnam. He wanted to be a reliever, not a starter, because he thrived on being in crucial situations. He also had courage, said Ralph Branca of LeBain. He really welcomed the challenge of being a reliever. He was a tough bird who loved to be in a crucial spot. "I always thought Clem would have had a great career as a starting pitcher," said Erskine. "But he told me, I don't want to be a starter. I like the pressure of coming into the game with everything on the line. I could also do it more often as a reliever." Clem LeBain was one of the main reasons the Dodgers won it all in 1955, said Hall of Fame broadcaster Vin Scully. "He had the heart of a lion and the intelligence of a wily fox. And he was a nice guy, too." Bobo Newsom, card number 15. Bobo Newsom was born in Hartsville, South Carolina on August 11, 1907, and was known to possess an eccentric and emotional personality, typically referring to everyone in the third person, including referring to himself as Bobo. Few major leaguers were treated as often as Lewis Norman Bobo Newsom, One story of the origination of Bobo came about because Newsom never could or would try to remember anybody's name. So he called everyone Bobo, thus earned the nickname for himself. In an interview years ago, Newsom said that his uncle called him Bobo and Buck when he was a kid, and it stuck. Newsom played for 9 of the 16 then existing big league teams from 1929 through 1953, over all or parts of 20 seasons, appearing in an even 600 games pitched, 3,759 1/3 innings pitched. He made his major league debut on September 11, 1929, going 7 innings in a 4-2 loss at Cincinnati's Redland Field. In a 20-season career, Newsom posted a 211-222 record with 2,082 strikeouts and a 3.98 ERA. He also made the American League All-Star team from 1938 through 1940 and again in 1944. With 211 wins, he's one of the 100 winningest pitchers of all time. His 222 losses also make him one of the only 2 major league pitchers to win 200 games and still have a sub-500 career winning percentage, the other being Jack Powell. Newsom is one of only 29 players in baseball history to date to have appeared in major league games in 4 decades. Newsom pitched valiantly in a losing cause in Game 7 of the 1940 World Series with the Detroit Tigers 2 days after pitching a shutout in honor of his father, who had died while visiting from South Carolina and watching his son win the opener. Bobo had said before pitching Game 5, "I'll win this one for my daddy." When manager Del Barker named Newsom to take the mound in Game 7, Bobo was asked by reporters, "Will you win this one for your daddy too?" He said, "Why no, I think I'll win this one for old Bobo." On one day's rest, he would lose 2-1. Newsom is mentioned in the 1949 poem Line Up for Yesterday by Ogden Nash, where he is the only player mentioned still not in the Hall of Fame as of 2023. Newsom died in Orlando, Florida on December 7, 1962 at age 55 from cirrhosis of the liver, and was buried in his hometown of Hartsville, South Carolina, which also has a street named in his honor. When Bobo started a game, he was determined to go the distance no matter what. On May 28, 1935, a third-inning line drive by Cleveland's Earl Aberville broke his left kneecap. When Washington manager Bucky Harris reached the mound, Newsom said, "I think it's broke." Harris asked Bobo if he could take him out of the game. "You kidding me? I said it was broke. I didn't say I was dead." Bobo continued to pitch, and after every inning would say, "It's broke, it's broke." His teammates laughed at him, assuming it couldn't be broken because he wouldn't be able to stand up if it was. After having a complete game, Newsom was hobbling around the lobby of the hotel, still insisting his kneecap was broken. Finally, he went to get an x-ray, and it was indeed broke. In 1935, Newsom joined the Washington Senators for the first time. On May 7th, Washington owner Clark Griffin paid $40,000 for Newsom despite his 0-6 record with the Browns. In 1941, Newsom's salary was reduced by $22,500, so he was pretty unhappy to receive a contract that called for a huge cut in pay from Tigers manager Jack Zeller. Earlier that year, Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis had freed 91 minor leaguers from the Tigers farm system because of illegal dealings by the front office. Newsom said to the bald Zeller, "Hell, Curly, you lost 90 players, and I don't see you taking no pay cut." Zeller sold Bobo to the Senators before the 1942 season began. In 1947, Bobo started Game 3 of the World Series against Brooklyn, but he lasted only 1 2/3 innings and took the loss. He made his last World Series appearance in Game 6, pitching 2/3 of an inning of scoreless relief. The winning Yankees awarded him only 3/4 share of the World Series money. When he went to a jeweler to get his ring made, he said, "Just make it 3/4 size. That's all I'm worth in this city." Back in the majors in 1952, at the age of 44, he made his final stop with the Senators, lasting 10 games before being traded to the Athletics. He finally retired in 1953 at the age of 46. In an anecdote from the book The Last 400 Hitter by John Holloway, Bobo was given the honor of opening the 1936 season in Washington in front of President Franklin Roosevelt. The Browns owner promised him a suit of clothes if he won. In the third inning, his third baseman whipped the ball across the diamond, but Newsom forgot to duck and the ball caught him on the side of the face. Clutching his head, he staggered in agony while his manager offered to take him out. "Nah," Newsom said. "Old FDR came to see Bobo, and he's going to see him all the way." He won that game 1-0. After the game, the owner of the club pressed some bills into his hand. "Keep the sugar, Bobo." Newsom said, "Bobo bought the suit before the game. The bill's on your desk." Later they found his jaw broken in 2 places. It had to be wired shut. He was one of the first men to throw a slider. They called it a nickel curve back then. Now it's a common pitch. Ted Williams said it gave hitters one more pitch to worry about and indicated it as one of the reasons why batters weren't hitting .400 anymore. It was a difficult season for Bobo in 1941 as he lost 20 games and the Tigers stumbled into 4th place. However, he was the most effective pitcher in the league against Ted Williams, who batted .406 that year. Newsom held him hitless in 9 at-bats until Ted singled in his last try. Ted would hit .413 without Bobo in the league. On the right-hand side, you'll see that there's an article there about Newsom joining the Orioles pregame television show. He had such a charismatic personality that the Orioles felt that he would draw in a lot of viewers, especially kids. Vince Agula, writer for Sports Illustrated, wrote in an August 1977 issue, "The happiest of the 31,793 fans jammed into Crosley Field on the sunny afternoon of October 2nd, 1940 was Henry Newsom. A frail 68-year-old retired farmer, Newsom, it seemed, had been kept alive only by the dream that one day he would see his son, Norman Lewis, pitch in a World Series. And this day he would start the series opener for the visiting Detroit Tigers against the Cincinnati Reds. He used only 102 pitches to subdue Cincinnati 7-2 and get his first World Series victory. I feel great over this one because my father was out there watching me," said Newsom in a post-game interview. But his joy was short-lived. Early the next morning, his father died in the Cincinnati hotel room. It had been his heart, said the attending physician, but Newsom claimed his father had died simply because he had seen his son win that series game. That was all the old man had been living for. Sobbing, Newsom attended the simple funeral services that afternoon. While out across the field, the Reds were evening the series 5-3 behind Bucky Walters. Newsom caught the Tigers' special train for the return trip to Detroit and announced he would take his regular pitching turn. "Dad would have wanted it that way," he said, "and I'm going to beat them for him." By Game 5, the series was tight again when Newsom, head down, walked slowly to the mound at Detroit's Briggs Stadium. A crowd of 55,189 was on hand to lend support to Newsom's bid to win one for Dad. The final score was 8-0, with Cincy getting only 3 hits. "I don't think anybody could have beaten me today. It was the game I wanted to win the most." While Newsom was winning, his father was buried back home in South Carolina.